Social Surge delivers everything you need. It's the surge, yeah, the Social Surge. Warm as the sun, smooth as the surf. Market and tech, the latest trends. Where the
good morning, everyone.
Never ends.
It is
Surge. We ride the wave, every broker.
And today we have a special guest. Mr. Allen Buchanan is joining us all the way from California. Wait, you're in California today, right? You're back home?
I am in California, yeah. I can see how that might be confusing, but here I am in SoCal.
So Allen is probably one of the most recognizable voices in commercial real estate. He's a broker, he's an author, content creator, creating content long before content was cool, a grandfather, and a traveler. You might know Allen from his Traffic Tip Tuesdays, and you might know him from his blog and from his social media. And now he's added author to the list. So let's welcome Allen Buchanan. And Allen, what inspired you to write the sequence?
I had 4 or 5 books in my brain, and I knew I wanted to write one, and so I was kind of struggling with what should be the first topic. I thought about encapsulating the Tuesday traffic tips into a little sort of book in that regard. I had a novel that I started that was really boring. And I've always been very passionate about training. So I created a training program called the Qualify Sequence. I've always explained the steps of a real estate transaction. I never called them the sequence, but I've always thought about the steps of a real estate transaction, and I've trained everyone that's worked with me to understand those steps, right? So Qualify became the hinge point. I created a seminar for Qualify. I was delivering it to our Atlanta office last year. And one of the producers in the front row raises his hand and he says, "When are you going to put this information into a book?" And it was like the light bulb went off, and I said, "There's my first topic." So what emerged was a double entendre, which I love. The sequence of your career, the decisions that you make that are foundational, and then also the steps of a real estate transaction, and then finally a legacy play. So I wanted it to have all three. I wanted it to be something that a practitioner could pick up, gain some practical insights. I wanted to share a bit of my story because this industry has been very, very kind to my family over the past 43 years. And finally, I wanted something as a leave behind so that if my grandkids pick this thing up in 20 years, hopefully I'll still be kicking, maybe not. They could say, yeah, here's what my papa did for a living, and this is kind of cool. So that was the motivation, and then maybe some divine inspiration along the way.
I love it. I love the fact that it was something that you were already doing, and it's something that you wanted, that you already had in your heart. And you had already basically created the groundwork and the map for it to happen. It just took that one catalyst. Why don't you turn this into a book? To be like, oh, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I can do that. It's kind of the phrase, we see it on X all the time. And Zach Mulzer is very good at saying it. You can just do things, right? We can just do things. And what's stopping us? Holly Pennington's joining us over on the Gram. Good morning, Holly. And good morning to DB, who's joining us over on LinkedIn. If anybody has any questions for Allen, please pop them in the chat. We'll be happy to ask and put you up on screen. Well, Allen, let me ask you, what is one of the biggest lessons that you hope readers take away from the sequence?
That commercial real estate is not a job. Commercial real estate's a career. And if you approach commercial real estate as a job, frankly, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed. I hate the phrase the long game, but it truly is. It is something that's built over decades, and it's something that's built one pebble at a time, not one large brick at a time. So if you enter our field, just plan on it taking you a long, long time to get up and running. Now, you might get lucky. You might be with a great mentor that's going to put you into a transaction and you make a lot of money, but reality would suggest otherwise. It's going to take you a long time to become established, especially in today's world, where there are a whole bunch of old guys like Allen Buchanan that are still practicing real estate, right? And we have decades old relationships that are difficult to crack. So it's definitely something that's going to take you a long time to establish.
What do you think 25-year-old Allen would think about this book?
I believe 25-year-old Allen would be astounded that he sat still long enough to author something. I was fairly impatient, as you can appreciate. I was a fairly impatient 25-year-old. At the time, I was working for the Procter & Gamble Distributing Company up in your neck of the woods in Seattle, Washington. And I couldn't understand why Procter & Gamble wouldn't let me call on, Albertson's corporate headquarters, because I thought I knew where it was at, and boy, was I wrong.
So. What did you do for what did you do for them when you were
Procter & Gamble? I started in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was what they call a section sales representative, which is a fancy way of saying I was going door to door in supermarkets and trying to convince them to stack Crisco shortening on their floor. And they made 4%. They made a 4% gross margin on Crisco shortening, and they needed 1% net to keep the doors open. So they wanted to keep that stuff in the back room. The last thing they wanted to do is stack it so anyone could find it. So that was a tough sell, frankly. And then I went to Seattle, Washington. I was what they call a district field representative, which is a fancy way of saying I shadowed the district manager. Then I moved to Southern California, became a unit manager. So I had people in accounts in Southern California. It's a great company. I really am fond of my time at Procter & Gamble. One of my early mentors was a guy by the name of Dwayne Coburg. He taught me how to write. I thought I knew how to write. Boy, was I wrong. And he taught me how to write in a very persuasive fashion so that folks could understand. And frankly, that's what enabled me to author a book. That's what enabled me to become a decent communicator over the years.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that, and I brought this up before, but it's such a simple thing of sales 101, right? So I've done everything from selling vacuum cleaners door to door, which is nasty. It's just nasty. Had a good closing rate. I had a 25% closing rate, so I was pretty happy about that. But like, you go into people's houses and you're trying to sell vacuum cleaners, and they're kind of people are gross. Ugh. I'm like actually scratching myself because I was remembering one house. I'm like, ugh. But yeah. I read I got into that. Good morning, James Milner. Thanks for joining us over on the Gram. We're talking with Allen Buchanan.
Hey, James.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that, like, everything that I've learned from sales, I've taken, I used it in radio. I've used it in social media. I've used it in marketing in my business. And it's such a foundational core. I love the fact that you were basically door knocking and having to go and go door to door and talk to people, because it makes it such a huge difference when you are communicating your message to an audience that basically can't see you, because that's what happens in radio. People don't know what you look like. They can just hear your voice and your energy. I used to get that when people would meet me in person, they'd be like, "Oh, I thought you were tall and blonde." And I'm like, "No, I'm a little short Mexican in a box." And so you'll actually see me write that still. Like, I'm a little short Mexican lady in a box who's talking to you about what's happening in the community and what's happening, news all around and funny stories, right? That's what we're doing, is we're communicating. But it's that very basic sales experience that taught me that that's what I needed to do.
Yes. And I probably shared with you, my wife, Carla, actually started her career as a radio salesperson in the San Francisco Bay Area. And you'll remember this, radio was a very buttoned up, very male dominated industry.
Still is.
And she worked for a radio station called KLOK in San Jose, California, Clock. And they had a very unique approach to sales. They only had a female sales force. And so that's where she started her career. But a lot of frankly, she's the A member of our team. If we were to enter the business world today, I would be the person staying home. She would be the person out making the money. I can convince you that.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your career and building a career that lasts. What did brokerage look like when you started out?
Very different than today. Very, very different than today. I chose Lee and Associates, and I was lucky. I've been at Lee and Associates now for 43 years. As of this month.
You've never been with anybody else?
Never been with another commercial real estate firm, right? My consumer goods career, I had a couple of companies, but no, this was it. So I got it right the first time. I was very, very fortunate. But our company differed from the big names at the time, the Coldwell Banker commercials, the Grubb and Ellis's, because we had private offices. And I thought that was really neat to have a private office and not be relegated to a bullpen. So my first office mate, I say they were private, they were semi-private. My first office mate was a guy by the name of Jim Smith, who was a chain smoker. And you could smoke in offices at the time. And so this guy was puffing away, right? Hector, you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
This guy was puffing away. And if I ever get cancer of the lungs, it's because of Jim Smith, secondhand smoke sitting there, right? So my training program consisted of, hey, welcome to Lee and Associates. Here's your desk. Here's how you dial the phone. Good luck. I'll see you at lunch. That was it. And so I had no clue who to call, what to do, how to start, what an industrial building was versus an office building versus a retail shopping center. No clue. So the only thing I could think to do was get out a stack of cards that I had collected during my job search and start calling them and just saying, hey, I'm with commercial real estate company, Lee and Associates. I really don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'd love to come meet with you. So that was it. And then, so I had lunch with the president. That was cool. And then that afternoon, my quote unquote mentors walked into the office, two swashbuckling gentlemen that were a couple of years my senior. And the one that I spent a lot of time with, Paul Earnhardt, said, hey, young man, let's go make some money. No, he called me young man. He was 2 years my senior. Let's go make some money. And we jumped in his pristine white Audi and started driving around. And I said, oh, okay, this is pretty neat. I kind of get this now. So that's what it looked like. We had no computers. We had analog phones. Our support folks worked on Xerox Selectrics, which were just the top of the top at the time. You could actually, they weren't actual typewriters. They actually had a little screen and you would type and it would appear on the screen. And that was just amazing technology for the time. But no, it was very much, you either called people, you wrote people, or you met them in person. That was the way you contacted people. So very, very different than what we deal with today. Could have never imagined the business as it exists today.
You think that's due to, I mean, with all the technology and everything that we have, right? It still boils down to like one important thing, and that's creating relationships.
That's right.
What do you think is one thing that you would want people coming into brokerage to know about building relationships?
Take it outside, direct to consumer. And I teach young practitioners to do this. We are taught at a very early stage in our business to go direct to our customers, go direct to the owner of a commercial real estate project, go direct to an occupant of an industrial building. That's fine. I still do a tremendous amount of that, and you have to do that in order to be successful. But think outside your customer. Think in terms of who talks to your customer that is complementary to what you do, yet not competitive to what you do. And for me, with family-owned and family-operated companies, boils back to about 6 professions: business bankers, business attorneys, commercial insurance agents, folks that advise on mergers and acquisitions. Those are the types of folks that are going to visit with my ideal customer on a regular basis. And so if I can think of in terms of creating relationships with those people, I call it strategic networking. If I can think in terms of creating relationships with those people who then in turn have 20, 50, 100 of my ideal customer, I expand my universe significantly. I didn't learn this until I was in my 50s, and it revolutionized my business. I teach young people today, create that network. Go to a law firm roster, find the juniorest, if that's a word, the juniorest member in that roster, and take that person to coffee, take that person to lunch, get to know that person, because that is how you expand your universe.
You know, I've never actually thought about going to the, I would call ancillary professions around commercial real estate. Like that wouldn't have occurred to me, because I'm like, everything's commercial real estate, right? But that makes 100% sense. Like the lawyers, the insurance, the appraisers, those people have direct connection to the people that you want to be in front of. And if you can establish a good relationship with them, where, you're providing value, again, we always talk about providing value. That's huge. And I hope people listening right now wrote that down, because that's actually, I literally wrote down strategic networking. And then I wrote down a couple little bullet points as to what you were saying about that, because we don't think about, we want to be in front of the person who's going to be the decision maker. But a lot of the times we don't have that access. So how do we get that access? We have to create a larger network around that person. So that
and you're in a great, you and Hector are in a great position, because your ideal client is a commercial real estate practitioner. Okay. Your ideal client is not a great deal different than Ron Santomassimo's ideal client. Your ideal client is not a great deal different than Linda Day Harrison's ideal client, right? Neither of those compete with you. All are complementary to what you do. And so if you think in terms of your ideal customer being a commercial real estate professional that is trying to become better at social media marketing, who else talks to commercial real estate brokers on an ongoing basis? How can you expand your universe by creating relationships with people like that? And that's what I teach. And there's a whole chapter in my book, The Sequence, that is devoted to strategic networking. It was truly one of the most transformational decisions I ever made. And as brokers, frankly, we suck at networking. We really do, because for us, it's all about the dessert. Let's get to the dessert. I mean, are you ready to sell or buy? Well, no, I'm not. Right. And you don't approach strategic networking that way. You have to approach it with your hand out. With your hand up, not your hand out. Right. You're there to help them grow their business. That's what they're interested in. And if you help enough people grow their business, they will help you grow yours.
I'm writing down.
That's a very good way of looking at it, right? Helping others eventually comes back to you. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's always somebody who could use a helping hand, and it might not be tomorrow. It might be in a couple of years or wherever, whatever. But they'll in turn provide you the same courtesy.
DB said, I tell people to contact juniors all the time, because they provide much of the seniors the new information, because generally they're grinding from the bottom. And that, DB, that is beautiful. I love that.
Spot on. Spot on. I tell folks that are new in the business, so if you see a sign and it's got 6 names on it, which some of our competitors have 6 names on their signs, I said, don't pick the Allen Buchanan, the name that's first. Pick the person that's last on the sign, because candidly, they're going to return your call. Not that I won't, I will, but some top producers won't. They just flat will not return your call. So
reminds me of a story that Bob Knackle was telling about the first deal that they ever got at Massey Knackle. But before
Who's that?
Yes, who's that?
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
So BK was telling us a story about that and how they were going after this building owner, and they basically said, we don't have a track record, we haven't done anything, but because we don't have any business, we're going to spend all of our time and attention on you, on selling you and your building. And they ended up getting, that was the first building that they sold. But it's exactly that. They were brand new. They didn't have a track record. So how are you going to position yourself to sell that? Well, I ain't got nothing else going on, so you're going to get all my time and attention. And
yeah, I love that. Frankly, I tell young folks that I counsel and I train, I say, figure out, you got to find a great mentor. And Bob's the best of the best. I visited with him in New York City last week. He was kind enough to show my grandson the map room. It was just an amazing experience. So I love Bob to death. Find a great mentor, but then figure out what that mentor doesn't want to do, right? Maybe it's social media marketing. Maybe it's preparing contracts. Maybe it's touring buildings. Maybe it's calling brokers to set up tours. Maybe it's cold prospecting. Who knows? But if you figure out what that person doesn't want to do and you become amazing at that thing, you're going to become irreplaceable. And that's how you really carve a niche in this business.
So Beth Azer also talks about that. She talks about the fact that she was able to, like, when she was in the office, like, she coordinated the uncoordinated and did stuff that other people didn't want to do. And she would show up when everybody else was gone because she wanted to make herself invaluable. And look, I mean, honestly, look where that took her. It took her to the president of the company. I'm blanking on the name right now. I think it's Tara something, but she took her to the head of that company. Like, it's huge. It's huge. Making those little choices to make yourself invaluable. And I don't think a lot of this generation understands, like this newer generation, I don't think they understand that concept. Where it's a concept for us, like I think our generation, it's very easy for us to be like, okay, I get this. I understand this. I want to work at this company. I need to make myself invaluable. I'm going to do these things that go above and beyond. And there's almost like a disconnect. Like, well, why do I have to do that for you? Well, do you want to eat?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we have the benefit of perspective. I'm much older than you two, but we've got 20, 30, 40 years under our belt. So we understand that. A new person coming into the business doesn't understand that. They just see a lot of folks making big money and they want to make big money. And what they don't see is, like we talked a minute ago, they don't see all the trials and tribulations and failures that have led to our success. And, frankly, part of what's led to that success is learning to do things that others don't want to do.
100%. It's amazing. Hector and I talk about this. We have 4 kids, and we know that our children look at what we've built and what we have, and they want that instantly, whether it's our relationship, it's our business, it's our house. They want that, right?
Right.
They don't see the years of struggle. They don't see the years of, okay, we only have $40 for the next 2 weeks to make it to the next payday. And I was explaining to my girls, I was like, okay, y'all don't have checks. We were like, cash a check on our, pay for groceries on Friday with the check, because Monday we know that the paycheck's going to clear and we're good. Like, they don't understand that concept. And it's really hard to, I never want them to be in a position where they're that close to paycheck to paycheck. But don't look at what we have right now and then immediately expect that it's going to come to you, because there's a lot of stuff that had to happen before we were able to get to this position. So speaking of that, and we're talking about and we're talking about starting in brokerage, you know, not when you started in brokerage, and maybe actually this is the question. Were you already creating content? Like, when did that actually start in your brokerage business?
2009. Started
Okay.
in 2009. 2008, I opened a Facebook account because 2 of our kids were out of school. One was still in school, and it was a cool way to keep up with them. I had no clue what I was doing. I just thought it was fun, right? So Carla went back to school. My wife went back to school. She went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, Los Angeles, to get an advanced degree. And she came home one day and she says, "You need to start blogging." And I said, "I already blog myself daily." She goes, no, not flogging, blogging. And I said, "Well, what on earth is blogging?" She said, "That's where you write about what you do every day and you post it online." And I said, "That would be the most boring content I can ever imagine. You know, 3 people are going to read that. I'm going to read it twice and you're going to read it once. So what on earth is that about?" And she says, "You're missing the point." She goes, "Here's the deal." She goes, "You tour industrial buildings, you negotiate leases, you help buyers buy buildings, you do all these things. So you do all these things, you write about them, you post them online. It's called working out loud." She coined that phrase. You're working out loud. You're working once, you're putting it online, and guess what? You're creating a digital footprint that when someone Googles your name, when someone Googles, "How do I find an industrial building?" boom, you pop up at the top of the Google search. And she goes, "You don't have to do it, but I'm just saying, if you want to become a part of the future, this is where the future's going." And so I have blogged on a weekly basis since 2009. And so that's 17 years. That's what created the Southern California News Group column on a weekly basis. And it has provided just an infinite amount of visibility. So that's how it all started. And as you'll recall, in 2009, there were a couple places that you could post content. One of them was Facebook.
Yeah.
One of them was LinkedIn. Twitter was started becoming a thing, but none of those had the reach that they have today.
Right.
And who knew that it would become what it has?
Right. No, and that's so in 2000, in 2004, 2005, MySpace was the huge platform that everybody was using. And I actually left radio in 2007 and opened up a retail location. Had no idea what I was doing. I can tell you that it did not end well in 2009. But I did know the importance of social media. And so I actually created a MySpace page for our business. And I started in social media back then, promoting on social my location. And I knew the importance of it then. I did have a blog. I was blogging then too, but it was more like lifestyle stuff, more mom stuff like that. It wasn't business specific. But I understood the importance of being able to get in front of an audience that I might not be able to reach normally. I also understood that at that point it was free, right? So
Yes.
why wouldn't I utilize it? Why wouldn't I try to get out in front of that audience? Good morning, Lindsay Barden. Thanks for joining us over on the Gram. We're talking with Allen Buchanan about the sequence and about brokerage. So going back to that, did people give you flack for blogging?
My God, it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy because you don't know me. You don't know me well, but you know me a little bit, and you know that when I do something, I go all in. So it consumed me. I was all about creating a social media presence. I had watched what Coy Davidson was doing in Houston. Duke Long became a good pal. I loved reading Duke stuff. I still to this day believe it's some of the edgiest, coolest commercial real estate content that's ever been produced. But oh my gosh, I got so much. "What are you doing? That's the dumbest thing ever. You're spending all this time. You should be cold calling. You should be knocking on doors, yada, yada, yada." So that was 2009. Flash forward 2010, I had a really good year. And we were at our bonus meeting, and one of the biggest detractors pulled me aside and goes, "Hey, tell me about this blogging."
Love it.
So all of a sudden it was, yeah, okay, I kind of get it now. And it's interesting. One of the quick points. So I've been blessed. I've created a training program called the Sequence Training. And I train 30 young professionals in Orange County and Riverside County, starting to do some work with Gainesville, Florida, with Tampa Bay, with Lee Corporate. So I'm really excited about that. But my topic day before yesterday was social media marketing. And I actually had a 30-year-old come at me with, "Hey, this isn't me. I'm not going to do this. This LinkedIn stuff, this is ridiculous." And I said, "This is very surreal for me right now because you sound like the 69-year-old. I sound like the 30-year-old. So frankly, you don't have to do this, but I can tell you that it has been transformational in my career and many others." And I recommended that he tune into Social Surge at 6:30. So we'll see if he did.
It's a surprise. I still get a lot of the times. I still get, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment? And
see, that's the going to the dessert. That's the going to the dessert that our industry always goes to. Are you making any money doing that stuff? Well, yes, I am, but I didn't start out making any money doing this stuff. And that's not why I started doing it. I started doing it to build my visibility. Because you got to be visible before you're credible. You got to be credible before you're profitable. It's just that simple.
It's amazing to me. And again, coming from that radio background, I understand top of mind awareness, right?
Yes.
It's the reason why you have 4 of the same ad play in an hour, at the top of the hour, at the 15, at the bottom, at the 45. It's because it's that repetition, because you're only getting 15 to 30 seconds. You're only getting that little bit. And social media is exactly the same. You are not getting the same content across your feed all the time. Heather says, what's your best advice for a young broker to earn the respect and consideration of being a capable broker in a market heavily dominated by a handful of well-established brokers like yourself?
Yeah, and I would go back to what I said a bit ago, which is figure out what that quote unquote senior doesn't want to do. And maybe it's as easy as you manage their social media account. I mean, I've watched what you and Hector have done with Bob Knackle. Prior to 2024, Bob Knackle wasn't on social media, or not to a great degree. And look at him now. My goodness, he's a titan. So that was something, I'm going to guess, that either he chose not to do for whatever reason, didn't want to do for whatever reason, and he outsourced that function to you and Hector, and y'all have built a magnificent image and a magnificent presence there. So I believe it's all about that. One of the best ways to get a senior on your team is approach them and say, "Look, you've been doing this for 43 years. You must have a Rolodex full of inactive clients, folks with whom you've done business, but aren't currently doing business. Would you mind if I called them on your behalf and tried to schedule coffees? Let's just see who's active." There's not a senior broker in the market that is going to tell you no. Every single one is going to say, "Please do that, and let's go." I mean, I would love for someone to approach me and ask me to do that.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. All of you young brokers who are listening, Allen Buchanan is saying, please come raid my Rolodex of my inactive clients.
And please define Rolodex.
Oh my God. I know you said that, and I kind of smirked a little bit. DB says in 2010, you had a really good year. For those that don't know, you deserve a big load of kudos for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'll tell you, 2008, when the market crashed, 2009, when it was the red dawn of the apocalypse. I didn't know if there was going to be a commercial real estate business anymore, truly. And I had lived through the 1991-92 downturn. I'd lived through the dot-com bubble. And 2008 came. It's like, wow, this is like nothing anyone has ever seen. What the heck just happened? And so, I couldn't be a male model. I was far past my prime to be a professional golfer. I thought, I got to do this real estate thing, so I got to figure out how to do it. And for me, it was, all right, let's figure out how to strategically network. Let's create a social media presence through working out loud, and let's start going back to basics, blocking and tackling. And so, that resulted in, at the time, it resulted in my best year in 2010.
But that is a great point. You were looking for ways to do more without really having to spend, one, more money, right? And two, leveraging your time.
Yes.
Because you write the blog, or you do the social post, or you do any of that kind of stuff, and it lives. You don't have to tell that story to another person and to another person. It's there for them to get that knowledge, to get that information, or to just to see what you're doing on a daily basis. And that is the biggest leverage of social media, is that it lives without you having to constantly repeat yourself.
Right. Exactly
right. That's the whole working out loud part of what my brilliant wife told me to suggested that I do. So I couldn't agree more.
I think your next book is Working Out Loud. And then what I'd love to see is I'd love to see you take all those 17 years of blogs and then find the core themes that you talked about in the blogs. Those are now all of your chapters, and boom, there's your next book.
Yeah, and it's already about halfway finished. It's called Delivering the Keys, and it is targeted toward my ideal customer, which is a family-owned, family-operated manufacturing distribution provider that is experiencing a transition. So yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Marcy Moneypenny says, Allen, what's the one training subject you consistently hear from brokers that they want to learn more about?
I would say sourcing is very, very key. And it depends on your level of, and good morning, Marcy, by the way. It depends on your level in the business, but the new folks fewer than 2 years really want to know how the heck you source it. How do you source a deal? And I break it down into 5 buckets. And so one of those buckets is the strategic marketing, the strategic networking that I mentioned. But the other bucket is, you got to learn how to pick up the phone and dial someone, and you got to have a great value proposition, and you got to be able to capture their attention quickly and all the rest. So that would probably be the top. I really enjoy the middle part of the sequence. S stands for source, by the way, of sequence. I really enjoy the evaluation, the qualify, and the under control piece. And that's once you've identified a prospect. I like the 3 next steps, because I think those are what really get ignored and yet are so critically important.
Yeah, that's the putting everything in. Well, honestly, it's having a plan, right? A lot of people, what we call spray and pray, right? They just spray and pray. There's no plan there. It happens with social, it happens with marketing, it happens with all aspects of business. If you didn't have the sequence, where do you think? Because I'm sure the sequence, as we're talking about it, right, has always been there. If you didn't have it, where do you think your brokerage business would be right now?
Meaning the book, or meaning the sequence, the steps of the transaction?
The steps of the transaction.
Where would my business be now? I would think my business would be close to where it is, because once again, the sequence was a framework that I figured out. Hey, here are the steps, and I figured that out before Joshua Harper, my son-in-law, joined me in 2014. Because I needed a real succinct way to explain to him, here's what we do, right? And you got to source it, you got to evaluate it, you got to go through all these steps. And then all of a sudden, he would watch me work, and he would go, oh, okay, I get it. Touring buildings is a part of the execution stage. Oh, I get it. We're sending out these mailers. That's part of the sourcing stage. Oh, we just had a meeting. We talked about this gentleman, this lady's desired location. Okay, that's the evaluation stage. Now I get it. But candidly, the more transformational pieces, Mo and Hector, have been the working out loud, which happened in 2009, the strategic networking, which started 2009, 2010. And then when I hired the Massimo Group in 2018, those are the three biggest decisions, frankly, that I've made over the past 40 years that have been transformational in my career.
I love that. Talking about transformation, I want to switch topics real quick because we're coming up on time. And one of the things that I love seeing on your socials, I love seeing you with your grandkids and all the places that you go. So, you know, you told me when we were in Palm Desert at SIOR that you take your grandkids places. So tell us about that. Tell us when that started. How old are the kids? Because I think you told me there's a certain age that they have to be.
Yes. So, yes. So my wife Carla and I told our grandkids, as soon as you turn 10 years old, we will take you anywhere in the United States that you want to go. And so we have 2 10-year-old grandsons now. We have 6 grandkids total. They range in age from 2 to 10. And the oldest turned 10 last September. He wanted to fish, originally wanted to go to Alaska. And we said, well, we're happy to take you to Alaska, but just understand the weather's really crappy up there most of the year. And you want to fish, the place to go fish is Florida. And so he said, yeah, that sounds cool. So we spent a week in Key Largo with our oldest, and just phenomenal. I mean, I have never been so sunburned in my entire life, sitting on the dock with that kid. But so that was trip number 1. Trip number 2, grandson turned 10 this last May, so a month ago. And we asked him, where do you want to go? He said, I really want to go to New York City. And we said, that'd be awesome. And I'm thinking about a 10-year-old in New York City and all that comes at you. And I said, how about we break it up and do a couple of days in Philadelphia, because you love history and Philadelphia is where what that's all about. So we spent 3 days in Philadelphia and 3 days in New York City. And when we were in New York City, we saw Corey Zelnick, which was cool. We had coffee. We went to the NACL map room. I saw a couple of clients. It was just amazing. Tried to connect with Gabe Einhorn, and he was just too busy. But yeah, so we've had all these amazing adventures, and it's exceeded our wildest expectations, because we've really gotten to know our grandchildren. And I'll just share with you a quick funny aside. I know we're bumping up against it, but our oldest grandson, when we were in Florida, was asking us about one of our kids. And we said whatever we said. And he goes, well, look, you should take him on a 10-year trip, because then he would really love you, you know? So I thought that was pretty cute.
That's awesome. That's something that, I think Hector and I look forward to in, one day in the future, very far in the future, is being able to take our grandkids and be like, okay, they're ours for a week. We'll give them back. They'll be safe and sound, but they're ours.
Yeah. And the trips were so different, Key Largo, and we never left the resort, literally. And that was great, because they had a dock and he could fish and we could watch him, and it was just amazing. New York City, we went to Philadelphia, we trained up to New York City, and then our train landed at Penn Station, and we walked 22 blocks through downtown Manhattan with luggage with a 10-year-old. Boy, you want an e-ticket ride sometime, try that. Holy cow. And I had to explain to him, look, they're zombies. You got to be careful of the zombies, because honestly, he nearly got derailed by a zombie.
Wow.
So anyway, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation to have with your kids when you know that you're going to be in a big city and that you're going to see people with a fentanyl slump or cracked out or something like that. And like having that conversation of like, okay, you don't look them in the eye. You just keep walking. You have blinders on. This is exactly where you're going. If mom goes single file and tells you single file, it's single file. Do not argue with me. Like there's all these like different little conversations that you have. Going back to the grandkids though, real quick, and before we end, I want to ask you, when your grandkids read the sequence, when they pick it up, and they read it someday, what do you hope that they're going to take away from it?
Papa was a good guy, and Papa tried to do his best for people that were business folks. He helped them.
I love that.
That's great.
Allen, where can people find the book?
So I just created, per your prodding, I created a website called sequenceframework.com. Sequenceframework.com. I'd ask you to visit there. There are a whole bunch of cool things that you can check out. That's the best place. You can buy the book. You can qualify a deal in real life. You can take a look at the pipeline. You can hire me to speak or train your team. It's all right there. Sequenceframework.com.
Sequenceframework.com. Yes. And he's being very nice about saying I gently prodded him because I didn't. I harassed him at SIOR. I harassed him. But one of the things that I love about what Allen does is that he listens and then he actually takes action. So, you know, if he thinks that something's going to work, boom, he's doing it. He's not sitting around contemplating, what's the ROI on that? No, it's let's do it. So sequenceframework.com is where you can find the book. They can follow you online pretty much anywhere. I know you're on X, you're on Facebook, are you on Instagram? You're on Instagram.
I have an Instagram account. I'm not active.
You're not active.
LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Facebook, and YouTube, of course, with the Tuesday traffic tips.
And then what's the website for people to be able to go read your blog?
It's called AllenCBuchanan.com. And that's where the blog is housed. I still have a Blogger account. Folks say, why did you use Blogger? I said, number one, it was free. Number two, it's owned by Google. And I figured, why not? So it's not a WordPress blog. And please don't judge. It's very crude, but it works.
I love it. I love it. Well, Allen, thank you so much for joining us today on Social Surge. Hope everybody goes and checks out the sequence. And of course, they read all of your content and comment, like, and share your Tuesday traffic tips. We'll see everybody back here next week. Appreciate you guys being here. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Social Surge delivers everything you need.